There is a unique history between white women and black women. And I need to do more women's uh, history is like most things in America, primarily misogynistic. And a lot of our women are left out. And because of that, there's some information that is very necessary to really understand what's going on today. I hear a lot of more online. Obviously, you don't find it so much in the university, but online, you hear people say, well, the past is in the past, let's leave it in the past. Well, number one, for you to say leave something in the past, you're implicitly saying that it is not already in the future. And if you're saying it's not in the future, you're either saying the people who are experiencing it are lying, or you believe it's not in the future because you're not experiencing it. So if you're not experiencing it, then you find it not legitimate. Well, let's go with leave the past in the past. That is as logical as saying when you go to a job interview and they say, well, tell us about your past employment. Give us your experience. And you say, well, let's leave the past in the past. Let's talk about the work that I'm going to do today forward. Or you're going to go buy a house and they say, well, what is your credit history? And you say, well, don't worry about how I've paid my bills before. I want you to give me a mortgage based on what I'm going to do today forward. Or if you go to the doctor and you say, oh, this hurts. And he says, how long has it been hurting? Have people in your family had that problem? You said, no. You don't need my medical history. Let's just worry about how I feel today. Everything has a history, which makes what's today happening significant. So for someone to say, leave the past in the past, it is one or two things. You're either completely insensitive to the people who are experiencing today something that began a while ago, or you're not astute enough to understand what happened yesterday has grown into what is happening today. And in this particular research, which is They Were Her Property, she's discussing how when slavery first started, before the abolition of the African slave trade to America in 1808, many slave owners discouraged enslaved women from reproducing. They considered enslaved infants to be time-consuming financial burdens who prevented their mothers from devoting all their time and attention to their white households. Slave owners often sold such women simply because they were conceiving and delivering children too frequently. But after 1808, however, when slave owners could no longer depend on the steady supply of newly imported African captives, they had to rely on the domestic supply of enslaved laborers, and they became invested in the natural, quote unquote, production of the enslaved labor force. Hence, they increasingly sought women who could produce and had already given birth to healthy children. By the third or fourth decades of the 19th century, slave owners prized enslaved females of childbearing age affixed higher values on them because of their ability to bear children and came to see them as sound investments. And that sound investment was passed specifically to daughters. And these pieces of property as women has reduced the scope of research, or can reduce the scope of research where we can find out more, because now we have narrowed this relationship of white women and black women and the wealth that has been historically developed and opportunity that is historically developed, because it says here that that the slaves was not only a for them, slavery was their freedom, meaning white women. They created freedom for themselves by actively engaging and investing in the economy of slavery and keeping African Americans in captivity. Their decision to invest in the economy of slavery and actions that followed those decisions were not part of a grand scheme to secure women's rights or gender equality. Nevertheless, slave ownership allowed Southern women to mitigate some of the harshest elements of common law regime in their daily lives. So white women at this point in slavery, pre-Civil War, are using black women to make life easier, to make life more attractive, to engage and elevate socially. And later, post into the Civil War, we see suffrage movement coming about, where again, white women used black women for numbers in the suffrage movement. And a problem with the suffrage movement was that it was not a woman's movement. It was a white woman's movement. Because obviously, in 1920, when women were given the right to vote with the 19th Amendment, white women spent the next 44 years fighting against black women to have the ability to vote and the same freedoms that together they were fighting for. Moving after 1960, or the 64, 65 Civil Rights and Voting Acts, again, after fighting against black equality and the Civil Rights Movement, white women, off of the work and abuse in the torture of black women through the 60s and the murder of black leaders, disproportionately, numerically, white women benefited from affirmative action more than any other group as far as education, employment, salaries, opportunities, access to wealth. So I still have a lot of work in my primary area, but I have a great respect for the role that women played in history. It's definitely something I need to know more about. This particular line has piqued my interest to see how that relationship morphed yet stayed the same. I have some ideas as to why it anytime something keeps having the same outcome, meaning the same winner, that's usually a concerted effort. And I think more research in that area would be a good thing.